Welcome back. This is the podcast Truth and Illusion with your host Christian Fanli and Katie Curiosa. Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 2 of Experiments with Truth and Illusion. So today we're going to try a little bit of a different format. We have Katie here, and she's going to be co-hosting. I've been in close conversation with Katie for the last couple of months or so, and I've known her since I was in Palo Alto 3 years ago, and we really just started engaging at a deeper level in these last few months around meditation, around dissatisfaction, around lots of stuff, philosophical stuff, existential stuff. And so I've really enjoyed the conversations and their depth and for me, Katie has a really intense curiosity, I would say, that she really has this, I think, a similar through line with myself, this want for truth and trying to get down to the bottom of everything. And I think it's going to be an interesting engagement with her and I kind of doing this, because she also brings out parts of me that I normally keep dormant. So it's going to be really interesting. So I wanted to just welcome Katie, and Katie, you could say a little.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. As Christian said, we've just been gabbing here and there. I attended a talk that he did for our workplace that blew my mind. And so I had to keep talking to him. And then eventually we thought, well, why don't we make people listen to us? So if you're asking what my qualifications are, they're really nil. And that's the whole point. I think he likes the fact that I'm not qualified to do this, and I'm just deeply curious. So hopefully I'm asking the questions that if you were in my shoes, you'd be asking. I feel very privileged to be able to ask a lot of questions. So that's what I hope to do.
So today's topic, if you saw in the email, is dissatisfaction and the taste of dissatisfaction. It's actually the sound. I started with the taste because I thought I was going to talk about food, but then we started talking about how music plays into that. So now it's the sound of dissatisfaction. I'll let you take it from here, Katie.
Oh boy, watch out, world. Actually, Christian, I have to say that reminds me of the first, I mentioned that talk that I attended where we had our first conversation in front of people, which is what we're doing now, which is kind of uncanny. And you had us think of a moment of pure contentment. And I spoke up and said, I find that impossible because I find there's the underbelly of contentment, which is knowing something can't last, which... And here we are. I feel like I just had a flashback. So, yeah, that's not very satisfactory. Dissatisfaction. Oh, my goodness. Where do we start, Christian? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about Buddha's concept of the loop. I think that would be a great place to start, because I'm actually, just so you all know for context, I'm new to everything. I'm trying to learn about meditation. I'm definitely seeking wisdom, and Christian is my go-to homie for that. So, Christian, enlighten me and maybe others who don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about our own dissatisfaction, and the loop that I'll explain may not be the one that fits yours, but it seems that we kind of start in a open space where things are open to us. And what tends to happen, I think, is that we end up finding out about pleasure and pain. And once we figure out that some things in life are pleasurable and some things are painful, it's just kind of just like the criticism stuff I talked about last week, is we begin to set our world up. And we set up our world in a way where we have the satisfying things, we have as much of those as possible. and we have as little dissatisfaction or displeasure as possible. And it becomes a loop because there's and maybe we shouldn't, I won't jump the gun getting into the objects part, but just the loop quality, we all experience it every day. We find ourselves striving for some better. And then by doing that, we disparage the moment that we're in right now, right? We say, if only it would all be okay if I just had this much money, right? We could fill that, and then we get it, and let's say we do get that much money, and then it ceases to be able to give us that satisfaction. There was maybe a momentary kind of fleeting satisfaction of, oh yes, I got it. And then a day later, you realize that that's not enough. And so there's this continued expending of energy of trying to get what we want and trying to not get what we don't want. And both of those situations are painful. So that's a little bit on the loop.
Right. It seems like, I mean, it's not like an expression moving the goalposts. Like if you can make it, then you're not striving any longer. So we just always think one further. Mm-hmm. I can see that. Does the loop also involve, is that just become a habit, like that craving for more, whatever it is, and moving that goalpost? Is that also the loop? Is it kind of like being addicted to that motivation, externalized motivation?
Yeah, I think it's good to talk about it in terms of habit. If we look at the neurobiology, it's that we have this thing called habituation, which means that if you do, let's say, a drug of some sort, let's say cocaine, because it has a really fast habituation rate, take one dose of cocaine, and basically what happens is it's a great experience, right? The second experience, the way the brain works is it actually gives less serotonin or less, let's say, positive neurotransmitters, because there's different ones involved in that. And so then you need a little bit more. So maybe instead of just that one dose, you need 1.1 dose. And it's literally for almost any object that we end up having, like we can have pizza. And if we have it over and over, we become habituated. The value decreases over time. It's literally built into our biological hardware. It's very, it's advantageous for us in an evolution way of like being able to seek that again and again. Is we don't want to eat the same thing over and over and get the same thing over and over. We actually want a diversity of things. That's how we kind of used to navigate the world. But now that we have this sustained situation where we could get the same thing, we can get the same pleasure over and over and not exhaust those resources. We're in a situation where we get to see directly that experience of the habituation. So yeah, it becomes a habituation. And what's really strange about it is that it doesn't just affect the object. So it's not just the pizza that you become habituated to. It spreads because our networks, our brain is a general machine. It's not a very specific machine. It's not just a pizza machine. It's the same network that processes pizza.
Keep yourself, Christian. Mine's a pizza machine.
Yeah.
But okay, to each their own. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to interject.
No, that's a good point, because we each do have, we do have unique things that come out for us. So it doesn't affect everything equally for each person. But at least with the pizza, we know that it's also going to affect when you go outside and see nature and how fresh that will seem to you, given you've how habituated you are, if that makes sense.
Right. But it seems like what you're calling attention to is something I think we all know, that if you scratch an itch enough, it's ruining your ability to feel that satisfaction from it. It's almost like we're baking dissatisfaction into our satisfaction. So there's no escape, is what you're saying. Okay, we're done here. Drop the mic. So as Buddha has mentioned this, not that I am an expert in what he had to say about confronting this loop, but like, what did he have to say? What was his advice to the rest of us about combating this issue? Because as human beings, we're going to, no matter how enlightened, we have certain needs, and certain things are going to be pleasurable to us. And then if we indulge too much, they become an issue or deplete our ability to enjoy things, which is twisted, really. Right. Come on, what is that about?
Right, yeah. And I think there's a subtle, the way it was explained to me, and I think also the way we can talk about a story to where that came true, is that it's really subtle, because you have to, one of the things the Buddha has mentioned, and also other non-dual traditions, is that the obvious thing is that things are impermanent. And he also said that things are empty, right? And that impermanence is actually what causes the suffering. So if that object, if pizza, if we didn't have this biology where we got habituated, and that the pizza itself was not changing and impermanent, we'd actually be perfectly fine. We'd be able to just do the material culture thing and we'd be good to go. We'd all be really happy. But we can't do that because, one, our biology doesn't allow for it. It doesn't allow us, it habituates. So then pizza, literally our favorite food, can become disgusting if we eat too much of it. That's how impermanent our systems are. We can eat pizza and have 6 slices. And for some of us, I mean, it's different for everyone, obviously. That 7th slice can actually go from, oh, I really love pizza, to, and we talked about this, I was eating Kind bars. I was living with a celebrity, and the celebrity had a lot of sponsorships, and I didn't want to live off of the celebrity for several reasons. I was doing research there, and I was also living in that lifestyle, and I had stopped going out, so I was stopped getting these very expensive meals, and so I was reliant on these sponsorships. And so the celebrity would get sponsorships with all sorts of food companies and stuff like that. And so one month, it was Kind bars. And so I was pretty excited because I really liked Kind bars. And I was like, yes. And they had like every flavor. They had the savory ones, they had the sweet ones. And I think I had at least 500 Kind bars, like inventory wise. And I could have gotten way more than that. And so I was super excited. I was like, okay, this is going to guarantee me at least a month's worth of like snack food. And yes, I have something stable. I have something I can hold on to. And it's really tasty. It's going to be great. Right? And for that whole month, I pretty much, because of my financial situation, I ate nothing but Kind bars. And so I was eating the coconut kind, the chocolate kind, the cacao, all the different kinds.
At least you were able to rotate through them.
Yes.
I mean, if you wake up and think, if I see another cacao, I'm going to lose my mind. The coconut today, like, right. There's just certain ones where you're like, not again, not this way.
Yeah.
How many flavors are there? Were there like about 5 you were rotating?
No, there was like 10 different flavors. So the savory, there's like 5 savory and
That's
5.
That's a kinder bar than I thought.
Right, yeah. So it was like, so I was eating these and I was enjoying them maybe for about 2 weeks. And then the 3rd week, I started kind of picking certain flavors, just like you said. They were like, okay, I'm not having that chocolatey one ever again. And literally by the end of the month, they were going to do another delivery, and I was just like, no, I will never have kind bars again.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Cold
go ahead.
turkey.
Yeah, totally cold turkey. I haven't had a kind bar since, but I think it shows the nature that this thing I really thought was consistently going to give me something. And obviously we all know this is common sense in some way, but it's just so fascinating to which it can change. The label on the kind bar from day 1 to day 30 went across the whole spectrum. Yeah.
I just love that you were living on glorified candy bars. Like, you're like,
right.
It's just, oh my God, like, what? Nothing else? That's in a celebrity's house? Okay, so I wanted to say, in case not all of you are curious about the celebrity, of course I am as well, but there are legal reasons why none of us can know. But now, you said you were there doing research. I don't know if you mean like, oh, I was hanging out, and in my mind it was kind of, it became research for me, or like if you actually, like, are you at liberty to talk about the research you were, the nature of the research? What were you doing there for 3 years? What kind of study?
Yeah, so I had just stopped doing, I was doing programming and software engineering before that, and I went into anthropology under these two professors, completely off the books. And these two professors, Henry Delcor and James Mullally, were anthropologists that, they went off to like Thailand and stayed there for like 10 years with local tribes. So I was doing a version of that in the United States for 3 years. But also this person was also a colleague, and that's how I got access. So it was a kind of dual relationship. One, I was a researcher living in this house and going to all these different places, but I was also, helping him, and also like being his assistant, going to these different meetings and a lot of other stuff. Yeah.
So what could you summarize your findings? Were you trying to figure out like the effects of fame upon, or riches upon, a mere mortal? Like, is that what is that the, I like that some people, when I think of anthropologists, I'm figuring like going into like vast deep jungles and finding civilizations that have never been uncovered, and you're like, I'm just going to live in your guest room and eat your kind bars. What a path you've had through this.
Yeah, I think the kind bars is interesting because when I first lived with the celebrity, I would go everywhere with him. So I would travel everywhere, go to, drive in $500,000 cars. I would be driving those cars, going out to clubs and going out everywhere, parties. I mean, it was just the exact replica of exactly everything you would expect, except there was this undercurrent. So the research was really about celebrity status systems, and exactly what you said. It was like, what happens, how do celebrity status systems work when you're at a certain level? Because this person went from $5 million to $30 million and went from, small fame to much larger fame. How do those swings work? And just looking at things like that, I was really fascinated at how people perceive celebrity and status systems like that.
Right. So I'm sure you found things are empty. Is that what you discovered?
Yeah. So I think it turned from being a really sociological to psychological, because I was going everywhere. So we were in London, we were at, close to $1,000 night hotels, like extremely expensive meals. I think there was no meal lower than like $300. McLarens were being driven around. I met a bunch of football players in England that were really famous, and I was really a little culture shocked by just the sheer luxury of it all. And there I was, also participating. Right, I'm at these parties. I'm having a drink. I'm participating in the endeavors, and of course there was also like really, things I wouldn't want to talk too much about, but there's also the partying and all the elements of that I was involved in. So the But what I started to notice, so there would be lots of, I guess girls and guys were over, but there were a lot of girls over. And every morning I started to interview these girls that were, they were like minor celebrities usually, and just talk about their life. And they would I would write down kind of what their life is like, what they do, and things like that. And in living with the celebrity, one day we went to a club and they pass all the bottles around and buy all these different things. And there's girls everywhere, and there's bringing the bottles, and there's, the patriarchy stuff. Everything is there in action, and you literally
patriarchy was at the club.
Yeah, no.
Why invited the patriarchy to the club? That's not a party.
Yeah, and I feel like in the club it's just so visible, and so then there was another guy. So there was at least $20,000 spent on drinks and whatever, and that was cool to a lot of the girls that were there. But there was this other guy that was a very, very famous singer who decided to spend maybe $120,000, and everyone in the club knew about it. And I watched the guy I was living with just be totally become unsatisfied, become completely feel like crap, because they weren't in the same range. They weren't even in the same ballpark. This guy was immensely rich. And here I was. I didn't have, like $1 to my name, other than like all of the social status and so forth. And they're bickering over the difference between $30 million and $100 million, which is obviously a $70 million difference. And I'm going to all these different places, seeing the same thing happening. And there's just this social media, scrolling through social media, trying to find, am I popular? And I'm also doing it too. I'm tracking it and tracking all these scores, and just seeing that nothing would do it. Would get a new contract, $30 million. And wait, the best guy has a $98 million contract. Why do I have a $30 million contract? And literally this kind of wish, we shared this intimacy of like, if I just had this much amount of money, and it was really 1 billion, which is a ton of money, everything would be fine. I'd stop doing all of this. I wouldn't have to do anything else. It didn't start at 1 billion, right? It started at like 20 million would be enough. Then he got 30 million. And so I started to see, not just from this description, but literally I'm watching, and psychologically a part of it, even I start feeling that we're not enough. Right? We're going to these, right?
You're an extension of his celebrity. You're there studying his celebrity, and you're like, I should be studying that guy's celebrity because he's 3 times as great as you, because he's got 3 times your million, 30 million. So you start taking it personally too.
Right. Yeah. And it's like,
you signed up for the wrong famous person is what you did.
Exactly. The wrong
You should
one.
have really studied that other guy.
I should have started with the A class celebrity, not C to A.
Yeah. No, Christian, did you, because I know your background is incredibly varied and constantly morphing, more than anyone I know, as far as your upbringing in different homes and different places and different socioeconomic backgrounds. I can only imagine, with that much experience under your belt, what it was like to get swept up in this fame and money frenzy, even though it wasn't your fame. But you were feeling like an extension of the celebrity, living in their house, eating all their kind bars for 3 years. Of course you would. So like, how did you come upon a practice then to keep yourself grounded, or did you just kind of go with it all the way until you broke or something? Like, what was that experience like for you, not as a researcher, but as a human being who's not used to those luxuries?
Yeah, now I did live with, I think, 2 very well-off families when I was really young. So I did have some experience with that dissatisfaction. I lived with a family who lived in the countryside who had, a macaw and 2 monkeys smuggled in from Nevada. So I wasn't unaware of status and living with that, and also being known as a kid from that family, but not at this level. Definitely not at this level. This level was beyond me. And I think I had a meditation practice that was very much more about sleeping. Like I couldn't sleep.
Because I've been a great meditator my whole life.
Right. Yeah. So I literally couldn't sleep. I was working because I got so involved with a lot of the businesses and politics of the celebrity's life and doing my research that I would be working 16-hour days easy. And I could not sleep. So I used to use meditation right before I go to sleep because I would be extremely tense, trying to beat, I was in this competition. And so it completely swallowed me whole. It was definitely the biggest confrontation in my life. I did not have any strategies. I did not have any good coping mechanisms to deal with that level of dissatisfaction and valuing myself from externals the way other people looked at me. If I didn't have I started wearing a suit, a very expensive suit almost every day. And like not wanting to go out if my clothes were not, if I didn't look good enough. I haven't had a haircut in years, if it's not obvious, but I didn't have haircuts before that often, but then I was having a haircut every week, and just like my body became so important. My fitness, the way that the level of fat that would be showing became so important. I shaved. I used to get my eyebrows waxed. I don't think any of this stuff is bad, but I got really obsessed with looking the part. And so I was just completely confronting the...
Christian, do you have photos of this era of your life? Because I cannot...
I do.
It'd be like seeing you in a Halloween costume.
I will send that.
Because you've managed to swing that pendulum so well. I don't know where you found the strength, but I'm not saying that. I wouldn't have guessed that you stopped waxing your eyebrows. I don't know these things. I would have never guessed. I don't know you're beautiful. I'm not saying that you're not beautiful. I'm just shocked that I gotta look good in the club.
Yeah.
Or get that six pack. It's hard to imagine placing value in those places. Is that the longest? I'm so curious because you had so much change in your life. Is that 3 years the most stable, longest period in one home and with one responsibility, like your research project? It just feels like you had so many switch ups, and I'm not sure if that's.
I don't know. Yeah. Probably. I think the most recent one was this one, which has been 5 years.
Okay.
Since then. Yeah. I will share photos. I have some really funny photos of me.
My God.
I have I think I have a 2 Gucci duffel bags, and I am skating down an airport in a brown suit of some sort. I will send you this video.
Did you say skating? Like you have roller skates on?
No, I don't know how we were skating. We were just running with these duffel bags and sliding. Yeah, sliding. There was this kind of rail with regular shoes on. I had really shiny shoes on that were really slippery, so it was great.
Oh my God! Just the absurdity of a Gucci duffel bag. Of all things, you're like, I was in my Gucci, my Gucci hat or something. I'd be like, okay, but a duffel bag of all things. So obviously, okay, so you learned quickly there that satisfaction cannot be derived from belongings, the externalization, other people's idea of your fame. It sounds like you got to see that firsthand, and then. But I have a question about me. Can we make this about me?
Yes.
I'm taking over. I collect things that I find. So they're material objects. I get that none of these are going to buy me infinite happiness. But I treasure them because I feel like they've been discarded by other people, and they encapsulate a moment in their lives that is sweet, and I'll never really know the full story, but collections of one-sided correspondence, like love letters from World War II. That obviously somebody's passed away, the kids get rid of everything in the attic, and then I stumble on them, and they could easily have been garbage. They look like garbage. It's just paper and pencil, but it's the content in them and the ideas that it spurs in me that makes them treasures. And so I realize I can't buy happiness, but I always say to my friends, like, I'm pretty good at it. Like, I get as close as you can to happiness. Give me a little bit of money. I'll do pretty well. Send me to a flea market. I'll be happy for at least 3 months. So, like, what do you have to say about like that maximalist approach? Because I feel like right now people are thinking if they just pare down and live very simply, the rest will fall in place. That enlightenment will follow the approach to their environment. And I'm kind of the polar opposite. So I wonder what you have to say about that movement, because you've done it. I mean, you've done the belongings thing. Like you have like 2 plants to your name. And you probably don't even think they're yours. You probably think they belong to everyone. So, like, tell me about all that.
Yeah, I think I spoke with you and I spoke with Nathan about this. We came to some really interesting, which is the first thing to say is that it's a complete delusion to think that minimizing your belongings has anything to do with the nature of your mind, has anything to do with the quality of your mind, or maximizing belongings. It's completely, we have to start with the premise, I think, that appearances aren't always guaranteed not what they seem. We don't know exactly what they are. We cannot put a button on it, but we know that they're not what they seem. So what happens is we actually, when we think of spirituality a lot of times, or spiritual progress, we want it to be something we can point at. And that becomes an issue because it's completely an attitude. I can collect many things and have millions of things, including lots of money. And there's lots of stories about layman Buddhists who were realized and were really rich and had lots of properties, and kings as well. And so what is that difference then? What is that attitude? So when you minimize things, and like you said, I don't have a cell phone. I now have this cell phone that doesn't have service I got from my project. I don't have a cell phone. I don't go shopping. I don't go to restaurants. Being in a store is like a once in a year thing for me. I don't eat, there's lots of things that I've seemingly renounced that may look from the outset as, mastery of mind or something like that. But this is complete delusion. Because you always have to ask the necessary question, which is so I fasted last week for 3 days. And the real question, I think, is the fasting didn't take me any effort. I didn't struggle at all to fast. And the realization that that some people imagine that people that are renouncing things are having grit. They're really trying. And they're
walking the walk. Yeah.
Right, walking, and that it's really tough to do these things. I don't find not having a cell phone tough at all. I don't find any of these things necessarily tough. So maybe I'm pulling apart 2 things. One is that you can have a cell phone, you can have social media, you can have all the collections of things you want. The question is, what is your attitude towards them? And once you look at that, become really intimate with yourself and the kind of what Chongyam Trungpa called your style of imprisonment, you can start to see the types of relationships you might have. So it's very easy to take a robe and become really, really attached to a robe. And maybe you only have a robe, but you can be completely attached in the same way that someone that maybe like a celebrity and other people like him were just as attached to their Lamborghinis or their huge wardrobe of 100 objects. So I think there's the teasing apart of what is that attitude that you have towards the things in your life. And if you go about trying to destroy them, there is something that is also worth mentioning. When you destroy objects, let's say you have lots of things and you want to get rid of them. I don't think there's any problem with getting rid of them. But to think that that's going to free you from suffering, it may temporarily take off some responsibility, some go-to things. Like if you don't have, I don't know, if you're, whatever makes you really excited, like Cheez-Its or something, if you get rid of the Cheez-Its, sure, for momentarily, you'll not have access to the Cheez-Its.
You think that eliminating Cheez-Its is going to bring you happiness?
Right, yeah.
Not the pizza, it's the kind bars. If it's not the kind bars, it's the Cheez-Its. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's the opposite of that acquisition of the celebrity, of thinking you can buy happiness, like ridding yourself of belongings to demonstrate some sort of high level of like evolved being. It's just you cleaning out your apartment, in the end. It's like, don't get rid of anything that really seems to, brighten your day just because you think, well, I have to appear to be this monastic individual. I can see that absolutely. So is there a way of, let's say you said you can have your belongings, you can have your social media, you can have your cell phones, all that. But when you actually look at your relationship with those things and realize you are dissatisfied with your relationship with those things, they aren't serving you. Like, how do you flip that to be like the notion of transcendent dissatisfaction? Like, what can you do to use that as a tool?
Yeah, so it's actually really good to have these objects that you're totally attached to in unhealthy ways.
So I think,
good, because I've got a lot of those.
Right. I think the trick is that is literally like, once you start practicing, you find out it's complete treasure. In the Tibetan and some Tibetan Buddhist texts, you'll find that that certain monks will put a cake outside their room to invite the demons to come back and visit them, because that's the only thing they know that can wake them up. It's through this transformation of adverse circumstances or our relationships. If we're extremely attached to something, it's not, oh, that's bad. It's like, oh yeah, this is something I can look at so intimately and understand myself completely through the object. And so every single object actually gives you this ability to really understand yourself, your ego, how it works. And you don't need to be condescending. You don't need to be judgmental in a way of that's a bad thing. You're actually just observing. And so with this transcendent dissatisfaction, you're actually starting to use that dissatisfaction to your advantage. So you can take an object, just take a single object. Maybe you've collected lots of things. Just start with one object and begin to understand your relationship. It might be tortillas. It might be whatever it is that really gets you going. And notice what type of existence that you think that it has. And what I mean by that is that, and we don't have to go too in detail on this, but we're often projecting something onto that object, but imagining that the object itself has those properties.
So
I was imagining it has those qualities any different from projecting that it has those qualities?
Oh, so I was, I mean, that's the same thing. I was trying to make the, so if I have, So if I see someone on the street and I believe they're pretty, I kind of sometimes forget that I'm the one that created pretty. That they don't have anything intrinsic to them that is pretty. It's very confusing because I think our biology wants us to really just think everything that shows up in appearance is exactly what is reality. But there's gaps in that, and that's why we're able to expose those gaps. So in the same way, if we have this relationship with an object, we're usually projecting something onto it. And we have to subtly become aware of what is coming from us, right? So we say, okay, let's say we could have a nourishing relationship with Netflix. We can have a less nourishing or a negative or an attached or a clinging relationship with Netflix. Let's say the clinging part of Netflix would be you actually think secretly or subconsciously that object is going to give you a certain amount of satisfaction that is stable over time. And we know that's not true because then we look on Netflix and we're like, I can't find a good show, and there's all these moments of dissatisfaction, and maybe the internet is not that good, and maybe you don't have the right food to go along with the Netflix. So you just start really looking without, it's the hardest thing to do, which moves into the self-love, is to be completely there for yourself without a single judgment.
Okay, so it's stopping the urge to, when you're dissatisfied with something that's as trivial as Cheez-Its, or I just want to bring up Cheez-Its a lot, or Netflix, like your internet's crapping out. You feel very dissatisfied with that moment. Right. And then on top of it, you're like, why am I being so upset about, like, you start the internal judgment of like, I shouldn't even care. I've watched enough of that this week. Like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
And suddenly you judge that and be like, why am I so mean to myself? And you start like the layer cake of self-hatred.
Right.
Whereas if you just looked at your dissatisfaction without judging it and acknowledged it in yourself, you think that's the way to get to self-love, by using the dissatisfaction.
Yeah, because...
as a tool.
Right.
So I think it's an odd effect that what happens, and this is from my experience, is like when you sit, and that's why you sit in meditation, because it's kind of supposedly a protected space, but no one can protect you from your mind, but let's say semi-protected, is that you're supposed to, and I say that with quotes, that be able to sit with whatever comes up, right? And why would you want to do that? And what is the result of that? I'll start with the latter question, which the result is, surprisingly, when you see everything as it is, just as it is, without sticking good or bad on it, all of a sudden, for me, this contentment wells up of like, wow, this just is. Look how this shows up for me. And there's a tinge of, for me, I think I laugh a lot at it because it's really funny. And there's also just a state of joy in accepting all the samsara, the negative supposed stuff, the suffering, and the nirvanic moments of joy or whatever. And when I can just observe it, there's this state of kind of joy and also compassion for oneself, because you're seeing the whole game being played out and you're like, amazing. Look at this. This is amazing.
Right. And it's such a much more accepting, it seems easy, and I'm sure it's not, as someone who beats myself up in meditation, you're thinking about not thinking. I was thinking about not thinking about not thinking. So like I'm as guilty as anyone. And if I were just able to accept that, be a little softer with myself, that would probably open the right doors. So it's definitely something I need to do, something I need to practice in the practice. I just want to flag that we're probably in the last 10, 15 minutes of the conversation. And if you have any questions that you would like me to relay to Christian through the chat, you can pop any ideas in there and we can discuss those. You brought up the samsara-ness of it all, and I meant to ask you earlier to break the ice, but I forgot. I want to ask you, I feel like dissatisfaction shows up for a lot of people in really kind of not very pretty ways. Crankiness, gloominess, lashing out in anger if something is dissatisfying. Mainly just being irritated, just highly irritated. And I'm wondering, when's the last time something irritated you? Like when you noticed that and you had to accept that in yourself? Or is this something that you feel like you've surpassed or have never been prone to with your personality and your upbringing? I'm just really curious about that.
I've definitely been irritated.
Me too.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I was recently irritated about a couple of months ago, the more recent thing, is So irritated about. I was irritated about identity, people taking up identities, and I think one of the things that I constantly do come into contact with, which is something I'm working with, is I used to, and it's kind of like old karma, where I used to say, okay, I can see the clear answer, but someone that's close to me is not being able to do that. And that caused a level of irritation because I want to so easily say, hey, blah, blah, blah. But I also know at the same time, it's not possible to just tell someone, and it's totally my projection. And so I think we can call that irritability.
Yeah. Well, how did you use that? How did you work through that? Is it just something that you let pass, or did you kind of dismantle it through some means?
I think it sent me off on a deep, like, I think the reason I started to focus on acceptance and things like that was because of this problem. And so in being irritated, I knew that I wasn't accepting things as they are. I wanted change, right? So that led me on this deep study of like emptiness and a bunch of other things. I think it like wells up this kind of like, I can feel that closing, the space closing, right? When the frustration comes in, you can feel that tightness in the mind. And when I feel that, I know that's a signal that I might need to be, I need to sit with what's being present. So it doesn't happen literally just like automatically, but over time, over the few months, I've been able to sit with that feeling, and I haven't really experienced that since then. But I would also say it's not that you don't want to experience it. I don't think I experienced much irritability, but I don't think you shouldn't experience irritability. I think you should experience the whole range of emotions, but not be identified with them. So the reason irritation doesn't show up for me either is because I'm not able to detect it very well. It's a possibility, or it's just not a spectrum that is in my causes and conditions that I'm living in currently that is pressed on.
That's great. I think I could find some irritability pretty much anywhere, anytime. So I think you've done well for yourself, Christian. We do have a question in the chat, which is great. I think this is a good question for you, Christian, because I know that you've been a workaholic at times, and you've been extremely driven academically and injured those eyeballs of yours by reading too much. So here's a question. I have stopped subconsciously getting dissatisfied based on comparisons, but I get frustrated and dissatisfied when I don't set to learn what I have set up for me, like a deadline. Mm. How do I see this in terms of the framework of times and deadlines I have set up for myself? Satisfaction based on your own deadline.
I love that. And that's something so fresh for me. I'm a recovering workaholic, and a recovering, yeah. And I think it's very subtle because I don't know, and I don't have the answer, but I'll take a poke at it. I think for me, from my experience of achievement, of setting deadlines, it's a way to for me, it came from a lack of trust. And that lack of trust required me to check on myself very closely. So constantly checking in on myself. Did I make that deadline? Because I dreamt up this ideal of myself, of how I wanted to be in the world. Exactly. It was very pristine. I could tell you the exact details of it. I could tell you exactly what courses I was supposed to take, exactly what books I was going to read, exactly what company I was going to work for. And I had become, I think, pretty good at doing that. But for me, it was the nature of suffering. So to me, I think it's not that we shouldn't have deadlines. I'm saying my relationship to a lot of those deadlines, to a lot of those goals I was setting up, came from this not accepting my utterly unique path. And what I mean by that is, one, we're not completely, we might want to accept some level of that we're not in control, but that we are this being, this individual, extremely individual being that has one pathway through life. And that any other than parallel universes, any other idea of your pathway through life is literally speculation. And to me, as far as I'm concerned in my life, is not actually needed. Because if you trust in yourself, you know that you are this creative piece of life, and that your life, once you begin to really accept that in some ways your life is not exactly owned by you, but not exactly not owned by you, and that this expression that wants to get out, this openness that wants to get out, is going to open up in the most beautiful way. And each of us is going to do that in our own way. We don't actually have to do anything, and yet we're going to do something, which is fine. But we don't it's almost like, imagine yourself in an ocean, and imagine that you're just a drop. And so imagine you're on a wave, and you're like, I'm an individual. I'm going over there, right? And in some way, we've worked it out to where we don't really recall that all these causes and conditions are shaping us, because we feel so individualistic in a way that's not connected to all of the things around us. And so in a way, I just want to say that it's great. It can be great to have goals and set deadlines, and we can set those, but we must check in with our relationship with those. For me, like I said, just my experience of looking deeply and intimately at myself is that relationship a lot of the times was built on not trusting myself, not trusting that I am this dream of life, and that the creative expression of me was going to come out. And really, it means that, to me, like, part of what you said was like, you're no longer in comparison, but is it really completely gone yet? Or are you still comparing yourself against yourself? Because sometimes we think it's about others, but there's totally ways to say there's a future me. There's a bad future me. There's a good future me. There's a bad past me. There's a good past me. And you still might be in this mode of, well, I don't look like the good future me or the good present me that I predicted 5 years ago. Right? So you can still get into the ego trip game in all these different ways. So I don't know your story personally, but I would say that it might be worth looking really closely without judgment at your relationship with time and who you want to be and how you're accepting this very life that you're living now.
Right. It sounds like another way of externalizing worth. Like, instead of the Gucci tote bag, it's the deadline. Like, if I hit the deadline, I'm worthwhile, and if I don't, then somebody else probably did. You know, is that
for me, definitely.
Yeah. So we have a fun question. This might be potentially the last one. I guess if you have more, let us know. But what would you want to reincarnate as? Oh, I think we have some more as well. So that's a light one for you.
What would you want to reincarnate? Oh man. Yeah, I don't think I've ever thought about this. So I guess I did a lot of damage to vegetables in this life, so maybe some sort of vegetable.
Nice. Like a root vegetable? What are we talking about here?
Kale. I think I've mostly done the most karmic damage to kale in this life.
Come back as kale. I mean, these are the surprising answers you've come here to hear. Here's another one for you. I heard that Buddhists don't believe in reincarnation, but just believe in rebirth. Being not a very learned Hindu, I thought these are the same things. How is it different?
Rebirth and reincarnation. So I also want to say that I don't identify as a Buddhist, but I know there are differing, there's a lot of differing cosmology to reincarnation and karma and rebirth. So I don't really have a view on that, to be honest.
Okay. And last one. The cops are coming for you, Christian, so we've got to get this in. How do you maintain calm even in disappointing situations? This is going to be helpful for everyone, I'm sure.
When there's disappointment, dealing with disappointment. I mean, I think one part of that could be to say what we said earlier, which is that disappointment is actually really on the path, early on in the path. It's a really good thing. It gives you a chance to come in full contact with something. Each of these negative states are a chance to come in full contact. Now, the question to whether you're going to be calm or not is how you interpret the situation. So just maybe remembering that when you're coming to any situation, the disappointment is coming from how you interpret the situation. You can have 5 people in the same situation interpret the situation. One could be disappointed, one could be ecstatic, one could be really, really sad, right? So the question for me is, how are we coming into disappointment? Not that we shouldn't be disappointed, but it's given us a chance once we make contact with that feeling. And you'll notice with things like disappointment that have this tinge of maybe a sadness and frustration, that there is a tenderness that's there. And maybe try to touch into that there. And within that tenderness, there's usually a what Trungpa called a soft spot. So I could feel really sad or disappointed, but if I sit with it and I really look into it, there's actually an opening there. And in any of these paths, I think it's worthy to think about that as something that you try to transform. So how do I take that opening that whatever the universe, blah, 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 is giving me, and become really intimate, make it a chance to understand this mind. And the reason I say that's important, because mind creates all the trouble and all the good things and the bad things. So you handle the mind, you're handling everything else. So I would say the disappointment, you might think about how to do it better in that situation. But I also think it's worth looking at, how's my mind showing up to this? What is it interpreting? What is it seeing? And how do I touch into that intimately?
Wow, I think that's quite an assignment for us all. I'm looking forward to looking for the tender, soft spots when disappointment rears its head. I believe that's our questions for the night, and I've sure enjoyed the conversation. I hope everyone else has as well. Kristen, do you have any final thoughts?
I think just for this week, just really sitting with our relationship with dissatisfaction and continuing to try to have that non-judging awareness. Now, that doesn't mean you don't judge. It means you're aware of judgment. So non-judging awareness is not identifying with the judgments as you saying that. So I could hear myself say, why did I do that? So stupid. I'm so dumb. Now, if I really think that's me, I'm saying that. That is not non-judging awareness. The non-judging awareness would be, I'm aware of a thought that was judgmental. And so let's try to do that, and it'd be great to talk about it if you guys are here next week, on what you guys find.
I love it. I'm down.
Cool. Well, thank
All right.
you, everyone.
Well, thanks for joining, everybody. Remember, more truth, less illusion. That's my tagline.
I'm gonna ring the bell.